All right, so hopefully the audio is working. I keep getting some strange notifications. Hopefully I don't have to do this video twice. It should be another short video, but this time we're just going to go over how to change um, our images to our extruded landscape in Rhino. So we're going to import our images, and we're going to trace them. And so we have these lines traced. We're going to stack them on top of each other, elevate them. Once they're nicely elevated, we're going to extrude them 1 inch. And after we extrude the whole landscape, we're just going to scale it into size. All right. And should be pretty simple. It took us about 10 or 15 minutes in class to go through this. So let's just do the same thing. I did upload a video for how to scale your image or to straighten it so that it's not very wonky. But we'll go through that now. All right, so first thing I need you to do is in top view, we're just going to import the images. Or actually, no. First thing, let's just save your file. Save as, and I'm going to save it in my folder for project 3. All right, so now just type in picture and import all of your images. So I just downloaded them from class. I already aligned this one in the previous video, so I'm just going to import that guy. And then I'm just going to right click on my keyboard to repeat the previous command. As discussed, the goal is to import one layer at a time because that's what we're going to trace. And so just try and pay attention to which images come after the other. If it's not rotating right, we'll just, we can rotate them later. Just keep stacking them one by one. All right. So once you have them, rotate them 90 degrees. Let me actually rotate it the other way because I think that's what the image closely resembles. All right, now I'm just moving them to align with one another. And it looks like I skipped a step. Yeah, I did these little backwards. Just make sure when you're stacking them, you do them in the right layer order just so that you don't get confused later on. I'm just typing moving it. Remember to snap your corners. It's not as essential for this, but always in general, make sure your O snaps are on and you can see your end near if you want point, mid, intersection, perpendicular, tangent, all those fun things. All right, and so that looks like it's in order. Next thing I want to do is just make sure my layers match up. So I'm going to have an image import layer. I'm going to have a base layer for the 8x24 model. And you can leave these as layers 1 to 5, or you can call them something else, but basically these are the different cuts. So right now with this, we only have 4 layers, so we're not going to end up using layer 5, but that's okay. So for my base import, for my image import, you can leave it as black if you want. For my base, I'm just going to make it, pink, why not? And I'm going to move this to the top. Not that top, actually. I'm going to move this one up as well, just so that the layer order works out. Then select all the images, right click, change it to the image import layer. All right, and now I'm going to start tracing. So base, I'm going to do first. Then I'm just going to draw a rectangle. All right. I also know that my base eventually will just be the 8x24 inches. All right, so everything that we do here is going to have to be scaled down here. If you're not sure if you're in the right scale, type in unit. Okay, units, plural. I'm in inches, that's what I want. Feet in inches, sure. Precision, a quarter inch, that's totally fine, but this should work. So if I typed in dim for dimension, this will be 2 feet, perfect, and this will be 8 inches. Lovely. All right, so I could delete that. Don't need it. And go on to the next layer. So layer 1, I'm going to type in polyline, P-line, and just start tracing it. For this, I'm going to make sure that my ortho is off just so that I can follow the curves a little bit better. Oh, and I'm going to turn off the grid snap so that it doesn't prevent me from clicking along the lines. All right, I'm not going exactly, to match the cuts because some things are imperfect when we use the hot wire cutter in school. But, still try to be as controlled as possible. I'm going to try and go this a little bit more quickly. I know that you guys are pretty comfortable at this point with pausing and rewatching steps, so I don't think I need to go into full detail, but I'm just loosely tracing. All right, it would be much more helpful if you will straighten your images in Photoshop, again, following the previous tutorial that I made. Just so that you have less work to do in Rhino itself. There's going to be some level of distortion in this, but that's okay because we're going to clean it up later. Uh, Let me get these other bits. Close that one up. Same here. And I want to make sure that all of these lines are closed poly surfaces. So I just go into my settings and it says 3 closed curves. So perfect. They're not poly surfaces, sorry, but just closed curves. That's what I want. All right, I'm just gonna lock that image layer just so I don't accidentally grab it later on. All right, I'm gonna continue tracing. Now something didn't get cut in the foam cutter as you intended for it to be cut. Now would be your chance to correct any mistakes that you made with tracing your object. So if something was supposed to be more of a curve or something smoother, now's your chance to do that. All right, so just 3 little segments here. Going on to the next layer. You see I'm just following along, tracing it. Again, please make sure that you trace it a lot more closely than I am. Might spend a little bit more time than I'm doing for this tutorial, and that's okay. All right, so it only has 2 segments. Then layer 4, believe only has this top ridge right here. This is one of your classmates' models that I photographed in class on Friday. All right, so now I have all of these layers. So the next step would be to take these and just scale them down to this 8 by 24. So I'm going to copy that. And then I'm going to group these just temporarily. Move this and scale. Start point, end point, roughly good. I technically don't need this base anymore, so I'm going to ungroup it. Oh, it deleted my scale. Let's do that again. Zoom selected, ungroup. Yeah, for some reason that didn't work immediately. Let's just make sure I have the right one selected, 8 inches. Yep, that's the winner. All right, now step by step, I'm going to move these layers over to this rectangle. So select it and move it. All right, if you want, you can group it. And then I'm going to scale it just to make it fit a little bit better. All right, and maybe I want to scale the width a little bit. All right, and then maybe I have to scale it 1D to get it to fit a little bit better. All right, and just keep going. Again, if it's crooked, which is very possible that it's crooked, you can just rotate. So pick my start point, pick my end point, rotate it to align a little bit better. And then I can scale 1D, try and get this to fit a little bit more. There we go. And that feels like a much better relationship to the original model. Okay. So just copying the layers over and over again. Again, it looks like this could use some additional scaling. Maybe some rotate. So I know where this should roughly align with the model. All right. So we'll leave that one. Again, I'm just going to group this, make it a little bit easier. I know that this is a little bit more inset, but I do need to scale it and rotate. So let me just rotate first. Bring this to where I know it should be based on the previous lines. I'm going to scale it 1D. All right. And maybe I'll scale it again. 1D. Yeah, it feels close enough. I'll do one more rotate just to make sure that these overlap the way I would like them to. All right, so very similar to the model. And again, you have an opportunity to straighten and smooth out these lines in Rhino. This is just the general, um, the general reference points that we're giving. All right, so now the next step is to extrude these lines. So we need to first align them vertically. So we know that our base layer is going to go up 1 inch. We know that layer 1, select objects, deselect the parts that we don't want to extrude. Now, if it's a group, that makes it easier. So that's going to go up 2 inches. So if you grouped your layers, then you're in much better shape. This one I did not group, so I'm just going to group it now for layer 2. Layer 2 is going to go up 3 inches. All right, and let's see, layer 3 is going to go up 4 inches. And then layer 4 is going to go up, layer 4 is going to go up 5 inches. All right, so now we see they're elevated from the ground plane, from the grid and Rhino. All right, so now we're just going to duplicate that one more time. All right, now we're going to start extruding. So just make sure that you're in the layer that you want to be in when you're extruding. Extrude curve. Make sure that it is a solid for this, and you're only extruding it downwards 1 inch. All right, so each step, just make sure that you're in the layer. Extrude curve, 1 inch. And it really helps when you're in a group because it just extrudes the whole group. All right, so I'm gonna do that again here. Extrude curve, downwards 1 inch. All right, now the base layer. Make sure you're in the base layer. Extrude curve, 1 inch. Okay. So this should look close to what you have. If you have some things overhanging, there's a simple little trick for that. We'll just trim it. So what we can do is dupe face border. Click the outside of this plane. This way we have a nice little rectangle. Extrude curve. This time I'm going to make it not solid. Just extrude it up, you know. We could go 8 inches just to make sure that everything's within the boundary. And we're just going to do a simple trim. So we're going to trim everything that's outside of this cage that we just made. All right, so my layer 1 was probably the most, you know, the most projected layer. But I'm also going to get rid of these little stragglers. This way everything's nice and clean. All right, you can also trim the curves. Not as important because we're going to focus on the solids, but since we're here, might as well. All right, so I think that's clear enough. You can, choose to spend as much time on that as you'd like. And you'll notice I actually lost one of my curves. So what I'm gonna have to do is just fill that in again. And that's fine. That might happen to some of you as well. So let's just do that part again. So ungroup, take this curve. I'm gonna copy from, let's say, this point. Extrude curve. Oh, I'm not in the right layer. Extrude curve. Solid, yes. 1 inch. And I'm just going to be more careful to only trim the solid objects. All right, still making sure that the core of the shape is still there. All right, so I must have just deleted one of the interior faces that were protruding. And that's okay, that happens. So now I'm gonna just cap it, make sure that it is all closed up, and do this to every layer, just cap, cap. And our cap command, you'll see that it fills in the openings, except for some scenarios like this where it's not capping, and that's okay. We could fill it in ourselves. So I'm gonna do a plane, a vertical plane, press V for vertical, click the edges. All right, and now I can just join that and then cap again, and it closed right up. All right, so just make sure that you go to all of these layers and you just tell it to cap, close it on up. All right, that one I actually didn't trim at all, so that's good. Looks like we need one more cap here and one more in layer 4. All right, so now everything should be a nicely closed solid poly surface. Yep, you see it's counting how many things I have selected. Oh, so something is left open. Closed extrusion, but it still says closed, so that's fine. Okay, so now I'm going to select my solids and only the massings. I'm not going to select any of these curves. All right, so once you have everything, just bring it out. I'm holding down Alt and the arrow so that it makes a nice little copy. All right, so now this is the direct representation of my model. Okay, so next up is scaling it up to the full size. So we know that our true site is 192 feet by 64 feet. So I'm just going to draw that here. I'll change this layer later. 192 feet and then 64 feet. All right, and just give it a nice little rotate. 90 degrees, make sure that it matches the orientation of your model. And I'm going to scale it down to this base. Okay, so now just like you've done in your previous assignments, actually let me change this layer first. Change object layer. You're going to select the object and then you're going to scale it upwards. So type in scale, click your base point as the prompt says at the top, then click your reference point as again it says at the top, and scale it out. All right, so now I have a fully scaled model, and that is all you need for class on Tuesday. If you're feeling ambitious, I would encourage you to start thinking about your major routes of circulation. So what I'm going to do is Circ 01 and Circ 02 for circulation. And I'm going to give it some, some extra little colors here. This one maybe I'll make super orange. All right, so Route 1 for circulation. Maybe I will draw a line from here to here and close it off following the edge. Then take this curve, join it, extrude it, and this will indicate that I'm planning to cut my model right at this point. All right, just keep in mind that these are for little scale figures, so feel free to pull out those scale figures from the previous assignment and just scale them up. You know that a person, if I were to draw a cylinder, they're roughly 2 feet wide, so I'm going to make it 12 inches for my radius, and then 6 feet tall. Oh, where did I lose my? All right, so just make sure that you grab your, you don't lose your extrusion like I just did. Pick a good reference point. And so if this is my person, I'm just going to move them around the site and see how they fit in each of the spaces that I created. So this is a very generous space. High ceilings, this is low space, but still acceptable because remember, each inch uh, of your study model is 8 feet. All right, and that's just because we're working in a 1/8 inch scale. All right, so this is a nice little stacked area, and that'll encourage you to start thinking about what goes on beneath these, our little circulation tunnels. Just try to mark out where you think your circulation might be. And remember to always reference the sketches that you prepared from your initial abstraction. All right, a lot of you had some really great drawings. And if your model does not reflect your drawings, then it's not working and you'll have to try again. Okay? This is the design process that we're all working with. So yeah, I think this is pretty straightforward. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me an email. And that is all for now. Thanks.